The condensation on Bill's San Miguel bottle was the only thing moving faster than Maricel's thumbs. They were at the Bamboo Room, a second floor karaoke bar in Makati, where the air conditioning always fought a losing battle against the swampy Manila humidity. Bill, 64 and wearing a pinstriped polo shirt that had survived 3 decades of Wisconsin winters, was currently explaining the intricacies of his 401k to a table of four women who looked like they were waiting for a bus that was indefinitely delayed. I sat 3 stools down, nursing a gin and tonic, watching the theater of it all. Bill was in his element. He was the provider. He had just ordered another bucket of beer and a plate of sizzling sisig, gesturing to the waiter with the expansive, clumsy confidence of a man who knows his currency goes 6 times further here than it does in Milwaukee. To Bill, this wasn't just a vacation, it was a coronation. "It is about stability, Maricel," Bill said, leaning in. His face was a shade of sunset pink that usually preceded a medical intervention. Back home, women, well, they don't value what a man builds. They're looking for the next best thing. But you're different. You're traditional. You understand the value of a man who can take care of things. Maricel tilted her head, a practiced, graceful move that made her long black hair catch the dim purple neon of the bar. She let out a high-pitched musical giggle. It was a sound designed to make a man like Bill feel 20 years younger and twice as tall. She patted his hand, a brief dry contact that lasted exactly long enough to be polite, and then her eyes flicked downward. There it was, the anchor of the evening, her smartphone. It sat face down on the dark mahogany table, a sleek slab of glass and plastic that seemed to vibrate every 30 seconds with a muted, insistent thrum. Bill didn't notice the vibration. He was too busy describing the square footage of the deck he'd built back in Green Bay, gesturing with hands that were beginning to show the heavy, blue-veined texture of age. I could see Maricel's screen when she finally picked it up under the pretext of checking the time. She didn't check the time. She swiped into a WhatsApp group. The name at the top of the screen, in bold white letters, was the retirement fund. "He is talking about the wood on his porch again," a message popped up from Joy, the girl sitting at the far end of the table, who was currently smiling brilliantly at Bill's friend, a man named Dave who looked equally out of place. "Check the breathing," Maricel typed back, her thumbs moving with the clinical precision of a court reporter. "I am thinking 2 years. Maybe 3 of heavy service. Ask about the secondary beneficiary," another message flashed. "We need to know if the ex-wife is still on the policy." "Working on it," Maricel replied, her face a mask of sweet, attentive interest. "He is about to start the 'I am so lonely' speech. Get ready to look sad." She locked the screen and placed it face down again, the vibration immediately resuming. Bill took a deep breath, indeed slightly labored, and smiled at the table, seeing only the nodding heads and the American charm he assumed was working its magic. The humidity seemed to thicken as the night wore on, or perhaps it was just the weight of the American king persona Bill was struggling to maintain. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with a napkin that was already translucent with grease. "You okay, honey?" Maricel asked, her voice dropping into that honey-slow register he loved. But as she spoke, her hand was already sliding toward the phone. "Just the heat, Maricel. My heart is racing a bit," Bill laughed, a wet, rattling sound. "Probably just the excitement of being with a beautiful woman." He didn't see the flash of the screen. "Heart racing," Maricel typed. "He thinks it is love. I think it is the 3rd plate of pork fat. Joy, tell Dave to buy another round. We need them tired so we can leave by midnight." The contradictions began to leak through the cracks of the traditional facade. Bill noticed that whenever he spoke about his feelings, Maricel's eyes would glaze over, fixed on a point just past his shoulder, only to snap back into a brilliant performative sparkle the moment he mentioned his house or his legacy. Then came the first red flag. A man at the bar, a local in a faded jersey, muttered something in Tagalog as Bill stumbled slightly on his way back from the restroom. Maricel and her friends erupted into a sharp, jagged laughter. It wasn't the musical giggle Bill was used to. It was a harsh, rhythmic sound that felt like a serrated edge. "What did he say?" Bill asked, smiling uncertainly. "Oh, nothing, Bill," Maricel said, her face smoothing back into a mask of serenity so quickly it was jarring. "He just said you look like a very generous man, a real Lolo." "Lolo? That means respected, right?" Bill beamed. Under the table, the phone buzzed. "He thinks Lolo is a compliment. I cannot even look at him when he eats. The way he chews, it is like watching a slow motion accident." The tension shifted. Bill reached for Maricel's hand, but she was already standing, claiming she had to help Joy with a family emergency on the phone. She stayed away for 10 minutes, her silhouette visible near the balcony, her thumbs a blur of motion. When she returned, the sweetness was back, but it felt brittle. "Bill," she whispered, leaning in so close he could smell her floral perfume over the scent of stale beer. "My brother, he is having trouble with the tuition this month. I hate to ask. You know I am not like those other girls." Bill felt a cold prickle of doubt, a brief, sharp realization that the connection he felt was remarkably expensive. But as he looked into her practiced, pleading eyes, he reached for his wallet. He wanted the illusion back. He needed to be the king again, even if the crown was starting to feel like a target. Payment received, the group chat notification flickered on the mahogany table. "He is hooked. Now let us see if we can get him to book the beach resort for next weekend. I need a vacation from this romance." By midnight, the bamboo room was a graveyard of empty San Miguel bottles and discarded napkins. Bill was slumped in the mahogany chair, his face a ghostly, translucent gray under the flickering neon. He felt the weight of the evening in his chest, a heavy, rhythmic thud that seemed to echo the vibration of the phone still sitting between them. Maricel stood up, smoothing her skirt with a brisk, efficient motion. "I will be right back, Bill. I need to check on Joy. She is very upset about the tuition." She left the phone. It was an oversight, or perhaps she just didn't care anymore. Bill's hand, spotted with the liver marks of age, reached out. He didn't want to be a spy. He wanted to be a king. He wanted to see a message that said, "He is so sweet," or "I am so lucky." He swiped the screen. It wasn't locked. The retirement fund group chat was a scroll of cold, hard data. He didn't see words of affection. He saw a spreadsheet. There was a photo of him from 20 minutes ago, caught mid-sentence with a piece of sisig near his mouth, looking ancient and confused. The caption from Maricel read, "Maintenance cost for second quarter, $1,200. Projected payout, 2029 if the blood pressure stays this high. Don't let him order the salad. Keep him on the pork." The realization didn't come as a shout. It came as a silence. The traditional sweetness, the connection, the way she listened to his stories about Wisconsin. It wasn't romance. It was a high-stakes actuarial study. He wasn't her partner. He was a maturing bond. When Maricel returned, she didn't lead with a smile. She saw the phone in his hand, and the mask didn't just slip, it was discarded. Her posture shifted. The submissive tilt of her head vanished, replaced by a cold, level gaze that made her look like the CEO of a company he was about to be fired from. "You should go, Bill," she said. The musical lilt was gone. Her voice was as flat and functional as a bank teller's. "The grab is waiting downstairs. You're tired. Your heart is working too hard." "Maricel, I thought," Bill started, his voice cracking. "You thought you were buying a person," she interrupted, her eyes flicking to the group chat one last time before sliding the phone into her pocket. "But you were just buying time. and the time is up for tonight." She didn't wait for him to stand. She turned to Joy, and they began speaking in rapid fire Tagalog, their laughter sharp and rhythmic, a sound that no longer had anything to do with him. Bill walked out into the humid Manila night, the heavy provider wallet in his pocket feeling like a lead weight, finally understanding that the most cruel thing wasn't what they said about him. It was that, in their world, he had already ceased to be a man and had become a deadline. The elevator in the hotel smelled of industrial jasmine and stale cigarettes. Bill stood in the center of the small mirrored box, staring at his reflection in the polished brass doors. He didn't see the provider or the king he had imagined himself to be 3 hours ago. He saw a man whose expiration date was being actively debated in a group chat named after a financial instrument. He sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, the sheets crisp, cold, and smelling of bleach. He pulled his phone from his pocket, but he didn't call his daughter in Milwaukee or check the weather in Green Bay. Instead, he opened his banking app. He looked at the digital record of the transfer he'd made for the tuition. In the clinical blue glow of the screen, the number didn't look like a gesture of love or a bridge to a new life. It looked like a premium payment on a policy he would never live to collect. There was a strange, hollow relief in the clarity. The traditional woman fantasy hadn't been shattered by her malice, but by her competence. Maricel wasn't a monster, and he wasn't a hero. They were simply two people negotiating the market rate for a lie that made the inevitable a little easier to swallow. She was trading her labor and her youth for a safety net. He was trading his capital for the privilege of not feeling invisible in his final decade. He realized then that the cruel things said in the group chat weren't a betrayal, they were the job description. To be angry at her was like being angry at an insurance adjuster for noticing the roof was leaking while they calculated the payout. She didn't hate him, she was just doing the math. Bill laid back, watching the ceiling fan spin in a slow, hypnotic circle. He knew that by tomorrow, his pride would probably try to rewrite the evening, to turn the retirement fund back into a misunderstanding, and Maricel back into a traditional girl who just needed a little help. But the awareness remained, cold and jagged as a shard of glass in his chest. He finally understood the game. He wasn't being loved, he was being maintained. He picked up the phone one last time, his thumb hovering over a new dating profile he'd bookmarked earlier that week. He wasn't looking for a soulmate anymore. He was looking for a new auditor. The most uncomfortable truth wasn't that he was being used, but that he would gladly pay for the next lie, because the cost of the fantasy was still cheaper than the price of being alone with a reality that had no use for him.